Good morning, friends, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on what time you're listening to this. For me, it's Saturday morning, so it's good morning for me. Welcome to the World Class Dads podcast. This is the show where typically it is my job to connect with world-class performers, entrepreneurs, thought leaders, people who have really done amazing things in this world and understand their journey into fatherhood and how they've been able to balance being these world-class performers and executing at such a high level while still being amazing dads and showing up for their family. This episode is going to be slightly different because I'm not going to be interviewing a world-class dad. I'm actually going to be talking just about myself, interviewing myself a little bit. This is a solo cast. So if this is not your cup of tea, that's all right. You can tune in next week for another great guest episode. But this is an episode I've been promising since we started and realized it made sense to go back, rewind the clock a little bit, and really introduce myself. Some of you guys have been tuning in for the last 20 episodes, not really knowing too much about me. So I wanted just to do one episode where I opened up the hood, pulled back the curtains, and shared a little bit about my life so that as I'm talking about my past and some of my journey, you guys have a little more insight to what that looks like. I can start off just by saying that I definitely have not executed at the capacity that some of our guests have. That is for sure. I'm still very much a work in progress. So if nothing else, maybe this will be a good episode to see how somebody who's really getting started is approaching this fatherhood thing. But there's definitely some things I've learned along the way. Great tips I've picked up from our guests so far, and some interesting learnings that I've experienced from my previous experience, and a lot of lessons learned from failure that I'll talk about in this. So just the format when I was thinking about how to do this, I had a lot of different ideas, but then I figured, why not just set this up with similar questions that I would ask to the guests? And I think that that'll keep it similar to what you've heard in the past, and I think will help me align my train of thought so I'm not just rambling on for an hour. So one of the first questions I like to ask guests is just to fill in a little bit about their background. You know, I do the bio reads at the beginning of episodes, but sometimes that misses some of the things that the guests would deem important about their journey and their life, especially as it relates to parenting and fatherhood, and how that intersection between their professional careers aligns. So I like just to get their perspective on that so that they can share it with me and with you. My background at the 30,000 foot level for you guys is a traditional kind of college into the business world path. But about 5 years ago, 2016, I realized that I wasn't meeting my full potential. And I realized that I had kind of taken a back seat in my own education. You know, I left education in college, and I really went deep into personal development, got really hooked on podcasts and, you know, just Tim Ferriss and listening to How I Built This and Joe Rogan and all these different shows. And what I realized is that there wasn't one out there that I could find that was really talking about a millennial's journey, which I was and still am, to really uncover what their purpose is and to be able to tap into that full potential to achieve at a high level. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew that I enjoy talking to people. I learn from talking to people and understanding their journeys. So I decided to start a podcast. And so you've probably heard me mention on this show, the Millennial Mastermind podcast. And that was the show that I started back then in 2016. And really it was my way of exploring how super successful people got there and what they learned along the way. And as that show went on, it went on for 4 years. We did over 170 episodes. I really narrowed in on entrepreneurs. I realized I was fascinated by this entrepreneurial journey. And so a lot of my interviews, most of them were with entrepreneurs and just digging into their backgrounds, especially when they got started, what that looked like and how they built those careers and what their professional journey looked like. It was something I learned a ton from. We ran a few mastermind groups. Like I said, at over 170 episodes, interviewed a lot of incredible folks, men and women. And it was a great journey, a great learning experience for me. Then end of 2019 rolls around. My wife's about 8 months pregnant, and we get the keys for a new house. So I spend a couple of weeks renovating it. Was there for 14 hours a day just working on this house. And during that time, the podcast took a little bit of back seat. But then, surprise, our daughter made an early appearance, was born a little bit premature. And so, funny enough, our first day staying in the house was actually her first day home from the hospital. So we had, in terms of furniture, our bed and a bassinet set up and her dresser. That was the only furniture in the house. We hadn't moved anything else in. We were literally living out of suitcases for 2 weeks till our dressers got delivered. It took about a month to have couches and a kitchen table. And it was basically we blacked out during that time frame and somehow survived. First-time parents just figuring it out. But as many of you could probably relate to, it's a shit show. Somehow the house got settled. We got in and kept that little baby alive. And now we can look back and laugh on it. Not sure how much we were laughing about it at the time, though. So during that whole process, though, what became super clear to me was that my time was going to be stretched thinner than I'd ever experienced as a father. And what it made me do is really sit down and evaluate what that meant for this podcast I was doing, the Millennial Mastermind podcast. And I think it's important to mention that at this point in the show, I had really lost that passion for it. I didn't have a clear vision of where it was going. It was something that I had just kind of had on autopilot for a while, for probably the past year, where I wasn't putting as much effort into the guests and the quality of the guests I was bringing on. I wasn't being as proactive of improving the show. It was more of just maintaining and putting content out there for the sake of putting content out there. And so when I started to think about how I'm spending my time, especially now that I had a daughter and our family was growing, if I'm going to be spending this time that's outside of my standard work hours, so I'm still working a job, still in sales for a marketing company, if I'm going to be doing something outside of that, that's taking time either away from something else I could be doing, being with my family, being with my wife, being with my daughter, then it needed to be something that I was super passionate about, but something that was moving the needle and that really was filling up my cup. And I had to get really honest with myself and realize that it wasn't. So pivoted away from the show. Oh, there goes my dog. Some of you guys, since this is a solo cast, some of you guys may have heard him in other episodes, but that's the dog, Jax. And he likes to do this sometimes. So it's all part of the working from home, podcasting from home journey. Jax, that's enough. So yeah, that's the background. And I still work that job in sales, selling marketing in the data space, marketing services. And it's a good job. I earn a good living there, but I still have this entrepreneurial itch. And so the Millennial Mastermind podcast came to a close. Definitely felt like a failure. We'll talk about that. But fast forward a couple of months into the summer, early summer, my daughter's 4 or 5 months old, and I get that podcasting itch back. And what I realized is that it wasn't necessarily podcasting that I didn't want to do. It was I didn't have my energy focused on the right thing. And so this idea hit me of like, there are these guys out there who accomplish things at an extraordinarily high level and are great dads. How do they do it? And especially in today's day and age, like in the podcasting world and watching, entrepreneurial stories that are movies and documentaries and shows are built around. It's all about that grind, that hustle, the financial success, the accolades, the wealth, the power that's built up from that, which is great. Don't get me wrong. I'm all for earning a great living and having a big impact. But there's not as much focus on who's doing those things, but also are awesome human beings outside of that and awesome family men. And so that's what really intrigued me. That's something that I really wanted to dig into. And essentially why I started the show is to find those men and talk to them about their time management strategies, their approach to being superstar achievers, but also showing up for their family. So this idea started bubbling up in my head of a potential show to do. And ultimately it became the World Class Dads podcast. So it started with me just reaching out to some potential guests on email and through social media, Instagram, and got a few pings back saying they're interested. And I said, all right, well, shit. I don't even have a name for the show yet, but I'm going to record these episodes and see where this thing goes. And so that was the catalyst that really launched me into getting after this thing full gone. So fast forward, it probably took me 3-4 months to really get the show up and running. From probably about 6 months from the initial idea to when we actually launched the show, but 3 or 4 months of actually working on it, not just sitting on this idea. And that's where that leads us today. You guys may or may not have listened to the last 20 episodes, the first 20 episodes, first of many, but have been blessed by the guys who have come on so far and shared their wisdom and shared their journeys and their challenges that they've overcome in fatherhood while they're trying to build these epic businesses or accomplish super feats, or writing books, doing just crazy stuff that has really made a huge impact on this planet. So it's been a blessing to learn from these guys. Another question I like to ask the guests is the time management question. So how they manage their time. And that, like I just said, that was kind of the catalyst for the show in the beginning of how these guys are able to accomplish at such a high level while still showing up for their families in a big way. And so my approach to that has evolved over the last year. I thought I had a pretty good grasp on time management prior to being a father, but once you are a father, you realize it's a whole new ball game. You were playing in the little leagues. Now you're at least playing, in the minors. And so my approach to it has really become scheduling as much as I possibly can. And what that's allowed me to do is accomplish everything that I want to get done in a day, but being fully present when I'm doing those things. And I think that that's really important for me because, I've work hours, I'm working my job, I'm being paid well and expected to deliver results. And that's what I'm doing there. But then when I'm with my family, and I've talked about this on the show before, but I struggled with this in the beginning, is like I would be with my daughter, but I'd be checking my phone, checking my emails. My head would be somewhere else. I'd be thinking about the podcast or thinking about different things. And so the real shift that I had to make that's helped me so much is if I scheduled out all the things that I knew I needed to do, like I need to spend 2 hours today working on podcast stuff. What does that mean? When am I getting that done? It didn't make any sense for me just to sit on that and try to squeeze it in. Trust me, I tried. It didn't work wherever I can. So it became, all right, I'm waking up early Usually I'm waking up between 4:30 and 5:30, and I'm getting some of the stuff done that I need to get done for the podcast, for, just my mental well-being. I've been doing more reading in the morning, spending more time stretching, doing things like this. Working out. Well, I work out usually over lunch because the morning thing, when not knowing when the baby is going to work out, just didn't pan out too well, or when the baby is going to wake up. But having that time scheduled that was typically pretty uninterrupted, can be now for me, at least. For a long time, I had no idea when the baby was going to wake up, so there were plenty of interruptions, but at least if I was up in that time, I could start to knock out a few things. And then just with open communication with my wife, saying, all right, these nights this week, I'm going to have to get some stuff done in the evenings. So she could do her thing, I'm going to work on my stuff, and then we'll definitely still have time together. But that open communication was another huge takeaway from me with her, is just saying, I need to accomplish these things. Here's the times I'm thinking of. Does this work for our family? But what all of that does, it sounds super lame, but Jocko Willink talks about how discipline equals freedom. And I think discipline and scheduling equals freedom, because then when I'm with my daughter and with my wife and we're having dinner or we're hanging out in the morning or whatever it is, I know I've got that time scheduled to get the stuff done that's on my plate, whether it's work, whether it's podcast stuff. And so having that ability to not even have to think about it, just knowing that time's already scheduled, game changer, absolute game changer for me. So one piece of wisdom, that's the one I'll share on the time management piece, that's been super helpful. And I would recommend giving it a shot. If you're not great about scheduling out your day and that sounds really constricting, not your style, I get it, I've been there, but maybe just try it, at least time blocking for like the big things that you have to get done. And that can include and should include the big things like spending time with your family. One of the other questions I love to ask guests is, we often hear about challenges and failures and how people grow from that in the business world, in their professional careers, in their life journeys, but not often in the context of family and parenting and fatherhood. I would say, and I've talked through some of it, my biggest failure as a dad so far, I'm sure there will be many more to come, and there's many that I could probably touch on, but the biggest one was really that lack of presence at times that I mentioned, where my brain just goes a million miles per hour and takes me all over the place. And it's so easy for me to not be present. And even if I'm not on my phone, which has been a struggle and something that I have made a concerted effort to overcome, but even if I'm just letting my mind wander because I have all these things I want to do and accomplish, and my to-do list is growing, or I haven't written my to-do list, and so all these ideas of what I need to do are just floating in my head. That's been a real struggle for me, and the time blocking piece is one of the things that has really helped me to start to overcome that. It's an ongoing battle. I'm definitely not perfect, but when I'm good about keeping my schedule, about having my running to-do list, that I can capture everything that I know I want to get done and prioritize it. When I'm doing these types of things, it frees up so much space for me just to be present and sitting having my head be where my ass is. I don't know if that's the saying, but I'm going to go with it. And so that's definitely been one of the big challenges that I've had to overcome. The other thing, and this is from an episode that I talked with Tim Kennedy, the Army Ranger and Green Beret and sniper MMA fighter, serial entrepreneur. The guy's a beast. He just opened up a school, or it's opening this fall. Like, to sit down and look at what that guy does is just mind-boggling and makes no sense. But one of the cool things that I took away from my conversation with him was this idea he shared that you're, as a man, you're the head of the household, both physically, spiritually, emotionally. And that's not to discount the role that moms play at all, because I'm a huge proponent of the power of a mom in a household. And frankly, I'd be fucked without my wife, and our daughter would be not on the path that she is on. But if you take that mentality as a dad, as a man, it's your responsibility to be the head of the household. It kind of reframes, the burden that you're willing to shoulder and the responsibility that you own. And ownership in general is one of my it's a big thing for me. It's a core value for me. But if you can own that role as the head of household, and the way the reason I mentioned him, the way he framed it is, you're the first one you're the first one up in the morning, you're the last one down at night. You're making sure that from the moment your kids open their eyes to the moment they go to sleep at night, you're guiding them through life. You're teaching them, you're mentoring them, and you're there for them physically and emotionally. You're present. And that really stuck with me when Tim talked about it, because it's so easy for me to look for the easy way out or look for an excuse. But once you just own that shit and say, you know what, there is no excuses. I'm the man of the household. I am going to accept this role. Whatever challenges life throws at me, I will overcome them with my family, but for my family. I think that is a game-changing perspective. Listen to that full episode. I'm sure he articulates it much better than I do, but very inspiring stuff from Tim. One other question that I always ask the guests is one piece of advice that's either been the best piece of advice they're given or that they'd give to their younger self or a new dad. For that one, I think that I want to give the same advice of really scheduling your time to make sure that you're being fully present. But I think another thing to think about through that is how you want your kids, thinking long term about what you want to pass along to your kids, and what you tell them, the things that you tell them are important, the stories that you tell, the lessons that you share. Those are all those are vital. But how you live your life is ultimately what's going to be the most impactful to what sticks with them and how they want to live their lives. So be the example for them every single day that you want them to see, how you want them to live their lives. Live your life that way. Just had an episode with Travis Chappell last week, and he talked about how he never wanted to be the guy who tells his kids that they can be anything. He wants to show them that they can be anything. And I thought that was such a great concept. And Travis is a guy who's accomplished a ton in a very short amount of time, starting podcasts, I think like 4 years ago. Now he's in Forbes articles next to Joe Rogan and Tim Ferriss as one of the top podcasts that can change your life. And it's so true that if you even think about your own life, the people that you most aspire to be like, whether that's your parents or somebody who you've kind of filled into that parental role as a mentor or something else, it's not what they've told you that is the most inspiring thing, that is what you ultimately try to mirror. It's what they do. And so just keeping that in the back of your mind at all times, that how you live your life is going to be how your kids mirror you and how they live their life. I think that just impacts the energy you put into everything that you do. So just some wisdom share. One thing jumping around here now, but I did want to talk about, because I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, and it probably falls more into the category of overcome failures, maybe overcome, or challenges. And I mentioned how when I closed the chapter of the Millennial Mastermind podcast, I briefly said how I felt like that was a little bit of a failure. And that is underplaying big time the way that I actually felt about that transition. So the day that, so I had an LLC associated with that podcast because we were doing some things that were generating revenue. The day that I dissolved the business officially and legally was a tough one. And a few things happened at once. I think something shitty at work happened where I didn't close the deal. I got the official confirmation that the business was dissolved, and I was going to get some patio furniture replaced, and it was not going my way. And my wife made one phone call and made it happen after I made like 7 phone calls. Talk about something that makes you feel less of a man. So these 3 things all happened one day, and I can tell you, probably also running at about 4 hours of sleep a night with the young baby, and I felt like an absolute waste of space, failure through and through. Like, I remember taking a walk with my wife and just being like, it's just a pity party. Like, I'm not even going to lament on it, all the things I said now, but I was just absolutely throwing a pity party myself and just said, I just feel like I can't accomplish anything. I can't win at anything right now. That was a low moment. Fortunately, I have a wise wife who helped to pick up the pieces, but more so than that, it was picking up my own shit, saying, all right, how many people have I talked to? How many successful folks have I heard on podcasts? How many books have I read where it talks about how you deal with failure, how you overcome challenges is what matters most? Fucking Batman, for Christ's sakes. Why do we fall? To get back up. Thank you, Bruce Wayne. Those lessons, fortunately, I've heard them enough that they resonate in the back of my mind. Picked my shit up and recognized that failure for what it was. The end of one chapter and opening up the space for a new chapter. And none of that would have happened if it wasn't for becoming a dad. I wouldn't have, had to have gotten brutally honest with myself to close that door. I may have gone on for another 2 years just kind of going through the motions. But what's ultimately happened then is it opened up the space for the World Class Dads podcast to come into my life and into existence. And this so far has been one of the most powerful things that I've done. Just the level of guests that I've been able to connect with, which I have to say thanks to you guys for that, because you listening to the show is actually what attracts those guests. It's not that they want to come and talk to me. It's that they want to share their message about fatherhood that they know is going to reach you, reach a broader audience, and really be able to inspire change for men who may have similar challenges that they need to overcome. So thank you very much for tuning in, for being a part of this journey as I assume dad, maybe a dad to be, maybe some moms listening. We're in this together. This is the brotherhood of fatherhood, but really the brotherhood of humanity that I think becoming a dad has been the most enriching experience of my life. And the reason I do this podcast is because I want to, learn things that are going to help me be a better dad, show up in a better way for my family while still pursuing my dreams, and B, help you guys do that same thing. Live your best life. Be able to inspire your kids through your own actions, your own achievements, and chasing your own dreams, but without ever sacrificing those relationships with them. And I think that's the most important part of it. And so I thank you for being here, being part of this journey with me. It's an absolute pleasure. I'm excited to get to know you more. I encourage you, if you want to connect with me personally, reach out to me. It's worldclassdads@gmail.com. I'm reading every email that comes through there. Check us out. Check me out at Brad Mulvey on Instagram. We also have World Class Dads at Instagram. Started a YouTube page. So you can find all the episodes on there. You may be watching this on there. I just want to connect with like-minded dads who are struggling with the same things, who are overcoming, who are being amazing men for their families. Those are the type of guys that I want to attract into my life. Guys like you who are on the same path. So I appreciate you being here. I hope you've found the show to be valuable and that it's content that resonates with you. We're going to keep bringing it. We're going to bring more guests, continue to bring great high-level guests. If you have anybody you want me to connect with, let me know. But I appreciate you guys. Thanks for being here. Rock on. Now go be the best dads that you can be today.